Ladies and gentlemen, the goal in your life is not to figure out how to be comfortable in your mental prisons, but to realize that you have the keys to set yourself free. Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and today we have another spectacular guest with us. Tim Durkin is here. Tim, welcome to the program.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me on, Tim.
Oh, absolutely. So when you got two Tims on at the same time, something magical is about to happen.
I agree. Who knows what could happen? Something could break out, that's for sure.
That's right. So my friend Tim here is an extraordinary leadership coach. This guy knows what he's doing. He's well known in the speaking profession and in the National Speakers Association. He's got an awesome book that's called Moving from Promise to Performance, and he's really, really great. So Tim, we want to get into your mind today and learn a little bit more about leadership. Now, before we turned on all the cameras and hit record, you were telling me a fascinating story about fire starters, because you say a lot of times you ask people, how's your day going? Or what's the best thing about your day? And they're like, I don't know, I got out of bed, and which is so true. And you said that, we need fire starters in the world. So tell me what about that story.
Well, I came across a story that I really do find interesting. I think it is incumbent upon some of us, and certainly if you're in the leadership position, you're one of us, that you carry an attitude that lights people up as opposed to throwing shade. And back in the Middle Ages, there were large caravans of people that would move from one area to the next, sometimes whole towns, or sometimes royalty would decide they wanted to go on vacation. Of course, they did this in wagons and by walking and horses. But there was always a couple of people in each one of those caravans that had a very important job, and that was they carried the embers. And as soon as the caravan stopped, there would gather wood, and these fire carriers would become fire starters. And their job was to get the fire started right away and to the right temperature so that they could cook the food and feed everyone. And then when they decided to move on, they would gather up some of these and they would tend to these fires. And so the fire starter was a big job, was an important job. It typically wasn't a senior person, but they took it very seriously. And lo and behold, you better not let that fire go out.
For sure.
Yeah.
I like what you said that where you pointed out it usually wasn't a senior official, right? Or a senior person.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people think that to be a leader, you have to have the title. And I bet you and I both agree that you don't have to have a title to be a leader.
No, absolutely not. I like to say the difference between being a manager and being a leader is that leaders provide light and managers provide heat. Now, there's nothing wrong with providing heat, okay? But the providing light can be done by anybody at any level in an organization. And it's just how the way they conduct themselves. They believe typically things happen for them. They don't happen to them. And they can see a positive outcome or an opportunity more often, and then they're vocal about it. And now they're not, tripping down a daisy-strewn path like a Pollyanna-ish, but they have a realistic. Put it this way: there are two types of people in the world. I like to say those who believe there are two types of people, and those who no. There are two types of people in the world. One group are problem-centric. No matter what the situation, they see a problem, they see a challenge. And then there's solution-centric people, and they're not evenly distributed. And what you want as a manager or a leader in an organization is to develop really good solution-centered people. And in order to do that, you have to be solution-centric yourself. That's very key. I like to tell people that good leaders develop followers, but great leaders develop leaders. And I think that's kind of job one for leaders to develop more leaders.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that brings up something that you were talking about almost 6 years ago. I'll ask you that in a second. A lot of times, especially before COVID-19, leaders felt like, well, I don't have time to develop other people. I barely have time to get my own stuff done. And so leadership was getting stuff done. It wasn't
Yeah.
developing people.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but you started to say, even up to 6 years ago, that the business model is going to change. The world's going to change. There's going to be challenges. And you even came up with an acronym. You call it VUCA.
Yeah, I
So
didn't come.
VUCA with a V, VUCA.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't come up with that. I'll give you the history. But back to your comment about what leaders need to develop, great leaders need to develop other leaders. It's not my original phrase, but I believe very strongly that once you reach a certain level, you have to send the elevator back down. And you have to develop really good leaders, even to replace yourself as you move on to some other job. Now, with regard to VUCA, VUCA stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It was developed by the U.S. military in one of their war colleges, and it was in 1999 when we found ourselves facing a very unusual enemy who believed in asymmetrical warfare. The way they fought, how they conducted themselves, nothing was off limits, hospitals, schools, nothing. And we also discovered that all the bombs and bullets in the world probably aren't going to work. What we needed to do was get into the hearts and minds of the people because they were very tribal and there was a lot of longstanding animosity. In order to meet that, they came up with this new leadership style. It was very quickly discovered that an awful lot of industries in the world were facing the same challenge in terms of being volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. They weren't facing an armed enemy. But for example, healthcare back in 2010, insurance began playing a bigger role. Paybacks were declining, reimbursements were declining. There was the Affordable Care Act. Will it pass? Won't it pass? Is it a tax? Is it not a tax? Very, very volatile. As a matter of fact, at that time, the very esteemed Gartner group came out with a statistic that said within the next 18 to 24 months, 75% of companies will face a crisis that could undermine and cause their business to close. Wow. Of those that do face that, 80% of them will go out of business or they'll be absorbed by another company.
Wow.
Well, Gartner went with 75%, and it wasn't 18 to 24 months, but COVID has affected 100% of the companies in the world. And things are happening and things have to be done differently. We are truly in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. You might want to add to that political situations, social situations. So we face VUCA on many fronts. I guess I was just lucky. I saw something had happened or that could be happening. So I'm on the staff. I teach at SMU's Cox School of Business for Executive Education, and they were looking for such a class, and they called me, and I've been teaching it there for 6 years. A wonderful, wonderful place. So yes. Yeah, we're in a VUCA world.
Yeah. Well, you may be lucky, but also preparation plus opportunity equals success. And so,
yes,
when you're out there sharing your message and sharing what to be aware of, that's what leaders do. They're shining the light, as you said.
Yep.
There were so many great things that you said in there about, sending the elevator back down when you're at the top. I thought that was a really great metaphor.
Yeah, and you don't have to be at the top. The other thing is that, we manage and we lead. We have both roles, and we have to switch. And a lot of people don't know that. They either stay full manager or full leader. But when we're managing, we're making sure that things are done right. But when we're leading, we're making sure the right things are done. What are you focalizing the group on? What vision have you created? Is it compelling? So it's all about the light, because as we all know, you provide too much heat to something that's going to get burned up or burned out, or the worst, quit and stay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That's really good. I like that a lot. So how are these companies coping then? What are you seeing in the trenches with companies that are dealing with so much volatility and uncertainty?
well, one of the things that I'm seeing, and I'm very alarmed, is fatigue.
Mm,
There's an awful lot of fatigue out there because people don't know what to do. The government is saying you can open, you can't open, you can open a certain percentage, you can't. In the meantime, the rent is going on. In most cases,
yes.
and they want to pay their employees, but they're losing their employees. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of ambiguity, and there is a lot of fatigue. And so I think the biggest job right now for executives, when you run an organization, the two opposite poles are Marine Corps, Peace Corps.
Mm,
And when you're really trying to solve a problem, when you're really trying to address something, it's Marine Corps. And then when you're really trying to nurture and build the organization, it's a little bit more like Peace Corps.
mm,
And right now, while we still have challenges, we really have to nurture the employees that are working, the front line in healthcare, for example. And while we talk about the front line in healthcare, the people who actually contact the patients, the senior management of healthcare trying to cope with this and trying to keep the doors open, because take elective surgeries, when that's the number one stream of revenue for most hospitals. If you take that away, how are you going to make that up? Now, the government with CARES helped, but it's a true VUCA environment.
yeah, for sure. So I know we both provide leadership programs in healthcare, and I was talking to the president of a hospital that I was one of my clients, and I was asking him how he was coping, and he said, luckily we took a lot of we were very proactive in our town, and
Mm-hmm.
so we didn't have as many cases as we were worried about. He says, but there was so much uncertainty, and then we didn't want to let people go, and then some people were thinking, because they were sending the bonus checks for $600, that they'd actually make more money staying at home. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, how'd you handle it? He said, we focused on our people. He says, in a lot of situations, people cut staff. They lay people off. They put them on furloughs. We did everything we could to make sure our people felt that they were safe now and they had a future here. In fact, one of the things that we did was we gave a raise to the custodial staff.
Yep.
Right? We empowered the people who felt like maybe they were on the lower end of the financial food chain, and we wanted to make them feel safe and secure as we went through this. And I thought it was just a very powerful move.
Well, and not only is that a good idea to do the custodial staff, but keep in mind the custodial staff is the first line of defense
Mm-hmm.
against COVID, against C.
Yes.
diff, MRSA, and all the other things. If they do a sloppy job,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be it's going to cost the hospital a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah, the focusing on the people and the employees. We always think of Southwest Airlines and their remarkable care of their employees, and it's turned out for 46 straight years of profitability. There's not another airline that can come close to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's extraordinary. When you take care of your people take care of you. And it's sometimes the hardest message to get in, because a lot of companies just want to cut staff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Now, I think, and I completely agree, I like to have my hospitals that I work with. I do a lot with rural hospitals, a lot of work with rural hospitals, all organizations, but rural healthcare is near and dear to my heart. And we want them to be the provider of choice, but we also want them to be the employer of choice, the place that everybody in town or everybody in a city really wants to go work because their reputation is so good for what they do and how they are treated. But I think a big challenge now for managers and leaders and organizations is self-care. They really do need to take some time to decompress, because one thing, in many cases, they don't have the commute. Perhaps they had a 30-minute commute where they could decompress before they went home to their second job, if you will,
mm-hmm.
and now that's pretty much been taken away. So I'm very big, and I've read a terrific book called Hard Break on how this whole productivity issue that some people say, well, it takes me 70 hours a week. No, after 40 hours, your productivity declines dramatically. Harvard studies, Stanford studies have said that. And it's just time to take a hard break. And the author of that break, Aaron Edelheit, and the book is called Hard Break, he talks about that you really do need to take an entire day off. It doesn't have to be for religious reasons. As a matter of fact, well, it doesn't have to be for a religious reason, but there's a time, one day a week, where you are not hooked to any electronics. And he said it's quite the difficult weaning process, but the increase in productivity by doing that at work is in the 30s and the 40%. So I think people need to understand they really need to give themselves a break.
Yeah, that's really good. I use this metaphor a lot. I live in Indiana. In Indianapolis, we have the Indy 500, you know, and a lot of us are built like these high performance race cars, and we're zipping around the track, right? We're built for speed and performance and to win. But if you don't take the pit stops, you don't finish the race.
So that's exactly true. And I also work in I work with a group called Mental Management Systems, and we work with very, very elite performers, world champions, very famous military war fighters, people who have to perform at the elite level. And have you ever noticed, if you ever saw a professional athlete off of the field, maybe at the grocery store or something like that, they move pretty slow, they're pretty relaxed. Professional athletes absolutely understand the need for recovery, and they insist on it, and they recover in different ways. They could be ice baths, or they could be just relaxing, but they're very protective. And if you think about corporate athletes, they just go and they go and they go and they go, and it's very counterproductive. And doesn't last forever. Something suffers.
Yeah, that's a really powerful analogy, Tim. I like that a lot. You know, athletes, they know, world-class athletes, you got to take a breath and rest and recharge. But you know, corporate athletes,
they don't.
We think it's lazy or something, that, you know, and we have to keep pressing on, and sleep is like, you know, it's a badge of honor if you only sleep 4 hours a day, which is ridiculous.
Yes, and people do see it as a badge of honor. I'm so indispensable. I'm so dedicated, and I wonder what other parts of their life are suffering for their dedication to the job, because it won't be anybody from work that, when they're lying on their deathbed, is going to rub the spittle away from their lips. It isn't anybody from the organization. It's going to be family, or it's going to be a friend. I absolutely, as a minimum, I tell people that you need 15 minutes of absolute selfish alone time. And I often get pushback, and they say, Tim, why don't you follow me, shadow me for a day, and tell me where I could get 15 minutes for myself? And I would take that bet every single time, because 15 minutes is literally 1/100th of a day. Okay, for the financial people who may be listening to this, it's actually 1/96th, but let's round up, okay? 100th of a day. Now ask yourself, how many hours of a day are you in the role of manager or leader? How many hours of the day are you in the role of parent, mother, father? How many hours of the day are you in some other role? And you're telling me that you can't take 15 minutes to nurture yourself and to create a breathing room, some breathing room. And that's actually, we just happened to move into a new home. And my wife and I, we designed in a very small room. It's not a safe room. It's not for any other reason. I just call it the breathing room. Nice. And it's got a comfortable chair. It's got low light lamps. And what it does is you just sometimes go in there for your 15 minutes and get yourself a little bit of breathing room, if you will. And because everybody needs a little breathing room, and it doesn't have to be a separate room. Another thing I recommend is walking outside. Tremendous restorative powers, especially if you can do it in where there are trees. There's actually a big movement, which I'm telling you, Tim, I thought it was a little hokey when I first heard about it. I thought it was a lot hokey. Okay. And it's called forest bathing. And forest bathing are these people that say you should walk in the woods and so on. And I said, yeah, sure. Those are what we might call tree huggers or something like that. And I was dismissive. And I'm ashamed of myself now because there are many, many studies, especially in Japan, where the fact that trees, when trees give off something called phytoncides, and phytoncides help the tree, protect the tree against the insects and disease. But when humans encounter them, they raise the number of our white blood cells called killer cells, and they actually raise our immunity. And we're just catching on to this right now. But, ask yourself or your listeners, how many of you have actually felt bad after going for a walk in the forest? That would be nobody. All right. And part of the reason it seems to be these chemicals that the trees put off that we get. So, I know I'm rambling all over the place, but
I love it. I love it.
Really, really enjoy the opportunity. I think we're at a great time of opportunity for leaders and for managers. Well, let's put it this way: it can't get much worse. So,
that's right. When you hit the ground, there's nowhere else to go but up. So
that's right.
I love that because you're bringing in science, right, to getting outside. We're talking about it scientifically, and so. A lot of people will say, oh, I don't have time for that. Or, smart, savvy business professionals are always looking for the edge. And often they're looking for it in the wrong places.
Yep.
Right? They're thinking I need a better sales technique, a better marketing approach, some other software that's going to IT thing that's going to, open the doors. And there's an old phrase that says, when you learn to go within, you never go without. So when you go for a walk, you're out in the forest and you're recharging your creative center, your brain, the part of you that makes everything happen. When you're recharging that,
and science has proven that time and time again, especially walking. I have a dog, and her real name is Rosie, but I call her 5 miles because I tell my wife, hey, I'm going to walk 5 miles. But I do have a situation where when I walk with her, I always have a pen and a pencil. And she knows now when I stop and get out the pen and the pencil, it's because I've thought of something. And to make sure that I do walk every day, I work from home, and even before COVID, I worked from home. But I always do walk a mile to work. Before I get into my desk, I go out the door, I walk through the neighborhood, and I come back in, and it's worked pretty well because I come back in energized and get the coffee, and there's a number of things that we can do to ensure our edge, and it's not working more than 50 hours a week. As a matter of fact, they discovered that 40 is about ideal. Yeah.
So, this is really great. And everything you're saying, I've seen in action, right? I've worked with many companies, and the cultures that are just driving their people into the ground, or just letting them quit and then finding new people. I've worked with companies that had 50% turnover. Right. And so they just were not taking care of their people, or there was a disconnect because the people at the top thought they were, but the message wasn't getting through middle management all the way down. Because most people are naturally not good leaders. They just, they might be good at your job, but it doesn't mean that you're good at leading other people.
Yeah. And people ask me how to become a good leader. I'll say, listen. Literally, study after study shows that the most effective leaders, when asked by the people that led, they said, she's a good listener. And that, I think, is very, very important. If you listen to people, Harvard once did a study that if you're a manager, supervisors, 65% of your time you should spend listening. If you're a director, then it's 75. If you are vice president, then it's 85. If you're at the C level, 95% of your time you should spend listening. And that's, once you start listening, you're going to learn, and then you're going to know how to act instead of react.
Now, that's very powerful advice for all of our powerful movers and shakers, type A CEOs and presidents and company owners that are listening or watching this right now, because a lot of times what I hear is, well, I'm going to give them a few minutes to talk, and then I'm going to tell them what we're going to do because I already have it figured out.
Yeah. As soon as they take a breath, I'm going to declare them the listener.
Yeah. And so they don't realize that, because a lot of people think, yeah, but I'm the visionary. I'm the one that makes this happen, right? But they don't realize that they could get so much more out of their people, that discretionary effort, if they validated their ideas instead of, well, that's okay, but this is what we're going to do.
And the reason that's important is that the old structure of command and control is really fading now, and it's connect and collaborate. Instead of companies being run hierarchically, they are being run what I call wire-archically. It is the horizontal. Who do you know? Who knows me? People say in business, it's who you know. And I say, no, it's not who you know, it's who knows you. And that hierarchy, that connect and collaborate is increasingly important. And if you want to know how to work with millennials, you have a collaborative based organization where it's seamless instead of siloed, and make sure you're working on noble things, that your work counts. And that's important to the millennials. It's even more important to the generation follow the millennials. Some people call them Z, some people call them globals, but it's really very important.
Yeah, I love that. It's not who you know, it's who knows you. I think that's really powerful. And how do they know you? Do they recognize that you are a giver or a taker, that you are offering value first or waiting to see what's in it for you? Two very different mindsets, and also very powerful insights about working with the younger generations. And,
it's really important. A lot of people are down on them. There's certain things.
Isn't it always like that?
Honestly, I so remember when I was, I came up in the 60s actually, and we were, anybody over 25, not to be trusted. And we were going to, it was the age of Aquarius and all that. And we were diminishing and dismissive of our parents, who happen to be now called the greatest generation. And we basically mucked it up. We really haven't done a really terrific job. But you're right. The younger generation look at the older generation and say, "Oh, I can't wait to replace you." And I hope they get it right this time.
Well, some of us get it right, and some of us are still working on it, right? So, and that's where what you just said, though, is where a lot of the mistrust comes from, when you have people that are more senior in the workplace, and then you have the youngsters coming in. And I've had a lot of conversations on both sides, and a lot of the older generation don't trust the younger ones because, I don't know how to do all this internet stuff. I don't know what a Snapchat is, right? And so I'm afraid you're going to steal my job with your fancy technology.
There's the word. Fear. The older generation's fear. I don't know. I'm a digital immigrant. They're digital natives. They know these things. I mean, if I have a problem with my computer, I've got a 9-year-old granddaughter. She'll take me right through it. But it is fear of being marginalized. It's rampant in the boomer generation, and we don't understand it. We've never been that divided in terms of the understanding of technology versus non-technology. I mean, we didn't have that issue back in the 60s and 70s, but they do now. And and technology is the edge, at least as far as communication is concerned.
Yeah, we are in a new world for sure. And so, on the other side of that fear, the younger generations are afraid that you're not going to value me. You're not going to respect me. You're not going to give me a chance. You're not going to train me properly so that I can really do a good job. And so that fear actually sets up the very challenges that people are afraid of in the first place.
Yep, it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
And by the way, my generation knows what catch-22 is, but the millennials, what is that? So
That's a good point.
about fear.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to count. And I remember, the artist Seal.
Hmm.
I'm a big fan of his music, and I bought his greatest hits CD back in the
Hmm.
day. And the liner note said, "I am the luckiest man in the world." And I thought he was bragging because at the time he was married to Heidi Klum. But
Hmm.
he said, "I'm the luckiest man in the world because I have a voice. I do not mean the voice I sing with, but the voice that I write with, because what I write gets heard." And then he says this great line, "Because the only thing in the world we really all want out of life is to be heard."
Mm.
And that, I think that's very powerful. I think that's what all the generations want now. I want to be heard. We can see it in the social unrest. Not
Hmm.
heard, not seen. I'll show you. I'll
Hmm.
be loud enough and I'll be active enough, and you will notice it. We want to be heard. And
Yeah.
that's very true of employees.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think it's effective to manage by walking around. I think it's very effective to manage by walking with. I think we need to take our employees and several employees and say, "Walk with me," and
Yeah.
then we talk, and then we find out things. But the management by walking around trying to catch people in the act of doing something good feels to them like you're trying to catch me doing something bad. But the walk with me can never be misunderstood.
Mm.
So,
That's very good. That's where your culture is king, right?
oh
Because
yeah,
because you have to develop that psychological safety so that people understand and see examples regularly of catching people doing things right and
yep,
assuming the best in each other instead of assuming the worst.
yeah.
So
Or
very
hearing
good.
something that they don't want to hear. I tell managers, reality is an acquired taste. But I will also tell them that the worker at the point of the work has the best relationship with reality. And you really need to be talking to the people that understand reality in your organization. So yes, and it might take you a while to get used to the taste of reality as viewed by the people that you work with or work for you.
Yeah, I try to teach a lot that there is no failure. There's just feedback, and feedback
Oh
is
yeah,
something that you want to desire because it'll
yeah.
make you better. So,
Well, that's when we talk about mental management.
mhm.
It doesn't matter whether you win or lose until you lose. But then the elite performers, they absolutely know that you either win or you learn.
Yes.
And I think the most important question when things don't go right that a manager or leader can ask the people involved isn't why did it happen
Mhm.
or what happened, it's what did you learn.
Yeah.
That I think that's the most brilliant question, and I saw a CEO do it and saved his organization by continuously asking, "What did you learn? What did you learn? What did you learn?" And for any parents who might be listening who happen to have teenagers, that's a really good question, or even younger than teenagers. Rather than get all upset, just say, "What did you learn?" And
Yes.
sometimes they'll say, "Aren't you mad at me?" So I'm not mad as much as I am disappointed. And that's a lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to have an impact.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's very good. So, all right. So, two pressing questions. So, the first one is when you're working with these elite people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether they're warriors or they're athletes, or even you were telling me how you were training some of the what was it, Miss America?
Beauty pageantry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very, very competitive. Um, and of course, I had a wrong idea about pageantry. And I
Mm-hmm.
have to state this because I thought that they were nice young ladies and, they won the Gene Pool Award and they looked very sharp.
Mm-hmm.
But to a person, each one of the contestants that I've encountered has very deep commitment to the community and to social causes. And I wish they could all win. And by the way, I want to be clear, my coaching with them was around how they present their platform, if you will. Now, there's another colleague of mine, Heather Sumlin, who does all of the coaching for the competition. But I did coach the women who became the last 3 Miss Texases using mental management techniques as they do.
So what's one of those techniques then?
One of the techniques is, this is a huge one, is to control your thoughts instead of letting the environment control your thoughts. When an elite performer is performing, their thoughts are synchronized with what they're doing. They are not worrying about the presidential election. They are not worried about the argument that they had earlier in the day. They don't think about what they're going to have for dinner. They are literally controlling their own thoughts. They are not at the whim of the news. They're not at the whim of the weather. For example, if it's having bad weather and there's a shooting competition, the shooter's aware of it, but not consumed by it. They just make the adjustment. Most people that are not elite performers, their thought process is controlled by their environment, whatever's on their mind at that particular day. So that would be my first one. And I'll give you another one, is respond versus react. Now, that is covered in Stephen Covey's amazing book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which the 30th edition is coming out this month, with additions by one of his sons, Sean. But in his first of the 7 habits, he talks about, when something happens to you, take a moment and understand you can respond to it, and respond to it in a constructive way, as opposed to react to it, which typically is negative. So, and he got that idea, by the way, by the great Viktor Frankl, who wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, based on his experience in concentration camps. And it's a book that I frankly think should be read by all 7th graders, mandatory, because he does talk about, there's a stimulus, an event, and then there's the response, but in between there, you can choose that. So elite performers choose their response. They don't react. Now, if you're talking about war fighters, yes, they react, but they have practiced that response. That I would say, yeah, there's 2 of them right there.
Yeah, those are powerful ones. You know, a lot of times people just are not paying attention to what they're saying to themselves. They feel like their thoughts are just random and there's nothing they can do about it. And they just come in and go out and you know, we're helpless. And no, once those thoughts pop into your mind, you become the director, the editor, the light and sound person. Yeah. What's the outcome that I want? You know, let's make this a more effective film.
What you literally do have to be careful, because we as humans are quite programmed for the negative, because it's survival. We're always out there looking for threats and what could go wrong and so on. So we do have to train ourselves to be a little bit more positive, and make sure that when we witness, which is a good word, we witness ourselves talking negatively about ourselves or our performance, then we interrupt and we respond with a word and then a phrase. For example, and that's called worm. And I learned that from my Navy SEAL friend, Mark Devine, is you witness negative thought, you interrupt it by saying, and react by saying, cancel. I say cancel. Cancel. Some people say delete. Some people say not me. Whatever it is, but you feel yourselves, well, I'm no good about that today, or I'll never make that happen. Interrupt by cancel, and then react and say no, and then you come back with a positive statement. Mark's Commander Devine's favorite is looking good, feeling good. I ought to be in Hollywood. But it's just that quick process. When you feel yourself, when you witness yourself going down a negative path for self-talk, because it's not what we say to ourselves that makes a difference in our life. It's what we repeat. And it's that perpetual programming that some people have in their mind about their inadequacies. And that's a big issue.
Wow, that's really good. I love that. So that's really great. Looking good, feeling good. I should be in Hollywood.
That's right. He's got others, but that's the one that sticks out in my mind.
Oh yeah. Well, they have time to come up with these things, these jingles, because they're running 50 miles a day when they're
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
by the way, I do recommend the work of Mark Devine. He's got a blog, he's got a podcast, and he's got he's got several fabulous books. So, and he has coaching certification. So he's top drawer, really, really good guy.
Yeah, special forces, I mean, are unique human beings. I have a friend, JB Simons, and he was a medic for the SEAL team, for his SEAL team that he was with. And then he had a PhD, and then became a reverend. And I mean, it was like ridiculous, all the things that he wrote books, Finding Your Why and stuff like that. And one day I'm like, JB, I'm like, wow, you're just like an overachiever. And he says, don't put your limits on me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, I didn't even know.
Now, that's a perfect example of he controls his thoughts, and you created an environment that sort of limited him, and he absolutely witnessed that instantly and changed it.
And so did I.
By the way, that's what but that's what those guys
because the guy
do.
was as giant as an oak.
Yeah. Well, if you want to see a giant and a scary looking guy, most Navy SEALs, you would hardly recognize them as being the bad that they are.
Yeah.
Except there's one in California, and he's got wonderful books, blog posts. His name is Jocko Willink. And Jocko does look the part of a Navy SEAL or a warfighter. It said that when Jocko walks into the room, coffee gets nervous. But I highly recommend people. There's lots of YouTube videos of Jocko Willink, Willink. Terrific stuff.
That's awesome. So very good. But let me switch gears a little bit. So how are you helping leaders now with the new situation of remote workers and people working from home and trying to keep them connected with the culture? Because you're not there now, having those pizza parties and stuff like that, or whatever people are trying to do, or to have the walks.
Yeah.
So any suggestions?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And I got this idea from my students at SMU. They now have meetings, but the first thing that they have in the meetings is check-in.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life? And this my daughter-in-law said this. It wasn't in a meeting, but it counts. She goes, it may take a village to raise a child, but it takes a vineyard to homeschool one. And a lot of these people have to have their commitment fulfilled at work, but then they have children that, well, now most of them are back in the classroom, but they have to have children, or they had to educate their children, and that's not in their wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So starting a meeting with a check-in is a very positive way, but you also get the temperature of the people that are in the room, because some people can say, COVID has hit home. It used to be obscure, but my father has it, and we're really worried. So that's one. And end a meeting with everyone going around the room and saying, say something positive for the good of the order, which is, I'm really happy we had this meeting, or I'm looking forward to getting back to the workplace next month, or whatever, or I heard a good blog or a good podcast, and there are jillions. I mean, who needs to listen to the radio anymore when you have this enormous amount of great information on podcasts in any area of interest almost that you can think of. So
that's extraordinary.
It's about the Peace Corps versus the Marine Corps. I happen to be a Marine, and nobody asks us how we feel. Okay. but we were very committed and we were very proud and remain that way.
Yes. Well, now I know how you got all your jingles and sayings now.
Yeah, that's right. Somebody accused me of speaking like a bumper sticker, but the point is, it's in some cases, and that's the challenge of the leader. Am I Peace Corps or am I Marine Corps today? And it can vary from individual to individual, because some people have taken the opportunity to slack off during and then some people are working harder than ever. And so you have to be a little bit more perceptive now than you were before. And I also am a big believer in the one-on-one phone call. And you know, so many people don't even realize that these things can make calls. You know, it's all text, but put the text away and call your people and check in on them. How are they doing? What's the biggest challenge that they're facing? I believe leaders need to get a real toolbox of very good questions. You know, like, who could be impacted by this decision that we're not considering? What are the 3 things we need to get right every day? Not how can we be the best organization, not in the Tri-County area? How can we be the best organization for the Tri-County area, which is far more inflaming and exciting than in? And, you know, just get some good questions.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, Tim. You know your stuff. That is excellent. So,
by the way, if any of your listeners want 100 good questions, my email address is right there, tim@timdurkin.com. I will happily send them along because I have been collecting them over the years. And now you couldn't ask all these questions in one meeting. You couldn't ask more than one, but if you ask the right one, it'll be a heck of a meeting and you're going to learn a lot, especially virtually.
Yeah, everybody needs to take advantage of that offer. tim@timdurkin.com. And then we'll have that in the show notes, and go to timdurkin.com and check out all his resources and his books and his classes and all the information that he has. Because Tim, obviously you know what you're talking about. This is good.
Well, but you just put either in the subject line, Tim Shurr, your name, or 100 questions or questions, something so I won't go over it. And I won't miss it. That's going to be very, very important.
I know. We both get a gazillion emails. All right. So 2 more questions for you.
Sure.
And then we'll be done, which I could talk to you all day long. I'm loving this. So
let's have another session.
Yes, for sure. So
if your listeners want.
Oh, I'm sure they do. So, okay. You talk about how sometimes a learning organization is passé, right? What do you mean by that?
The learning organization, it's very important that an organization learns, because an organization cannot outperform the conscious level of its leadership. It's the self-image and the capability and the belief that the leaders have. So they should always be learning. But now, pre-COVID and even during COVID, the opportunity to go away for a week for training or even 3 days, it's not happening. And it can't happen very easily. So instead of a learning organization, I believe managers need to sharpen their skills in teaching and become a teaching organization led by the managers. Now, as we talked about homeschooling, some people are good at it and other people, it's way outside their comfort or ability zone. But I believe that we really need to teach managers how to become better instructors, if you will. And it's really not that hard. You know, I'm a big fan of Udemy. You can get all kinds of courses there for very little money, taught by outstanding instructors. And they last, you know, an hour at a time or less. So the idea is we really need to be learning organization, but in the sense that our managers need to be able to teach people the right way. It's a little bit like I said earlier, you have to send the elevator back down. And if you're going to send the elevator back down, you better know how to be a pretty good mentor or a coach or an instructor. And the other thing that I want managers and leaders to understand is that you probably can't, I will never say never, but you probably can't manage the people the way that you want to be managed. That's a big mistake that I see in managers who stumble, especially new managers. And that is, they simply think that everybody will respond the way that they would respond.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. And that's why it's so important to listen, is your people will tell you how they want to be led or how they want to be managed if you do take the time. So that's part of being a teaching organization as well.
That's a beautiful distinction. I really love that. Instead of just learning, teaching, that's really good, Tim. Mm-hmm. One of the coolest tools that I ever came across that I've used a lot is to create a user one-sheet manual. Mm-hmm. For everybody, because I just thought that was so clever. You know, you get a user manual with just about anything you buy. So why don't you create a simple user manual for the, the 10 or the 20 people you might lead. And if you have 1,000 people, even better, because you won't be able to keep all that in your head.
That's a great idea. I'm taking it.
Yeah, take it. It wasn't mine to begin with. So we keep sharing, right? And
exactly.
Yeah, so that is an awesome idea, because then you can pull up and say, this is what he likes, or this is what she likes, this is what they do not like, this is the best way to get a response from them, and then exactly how to communicate. And
it's the same way people say, I don't know what to buy for a gift for my relative. I'm not in favor of giving gifts to your employees per se, but everybody says, I don't know what to get her. And I go, if you listen to them, they will always tell you. I didn't know that I have a daughter-in-law. I know a lot of the things that she likes, but she said her real passion is jigsaw puzzles. Well, there's a lot of, and she loves Christmas. She loves decorating for Christmas. So there's a lot of Christmas jigsaw puzzles. And, I presented with her and it's really thoughtful. Now, I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm saying if you ever say, I don't know what to buy them, it might be because you didn't listen to them, because people will always tell you what their interests are.
Yeah, that's very good. And pat yourself on the back. I'm tired of people feeling bad about, feeling good. And
that's right.
People always have to say that, that you might think this is a corny idea. However, this is how I feel. Heck with that, right? Or
it's always
yourself on the back.
That's right. It's always a choice. Isn't it? I mean, you can choose your attitude when you get up in the morning. You can choose your attitude in any situation. Once again, I'm not talking about, feeling good when bad things happen necessarily. But one of the perspectives that Lanny Basham, who is the founder of Mental Management Systems, gave me was look back at your life and the things that you thought were bad. How good did they turn out to be? What door did they open? He said, things happen for you. Things don't happen to you. And after practicing years and years as a rifle shooter, 9 years, 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, he wanted to win the Olympic gold medal and lost it in the final round, silver medal. But that is what created the opportunity for him to, one, come back and win the gold medal the next Olympics. But he has taught hundreds and hundreds of world champions and special forces operators, a lot of interesting people, because he looked back and said, what happened for me? It's even deeper than what did I learn, is things happen for you. The job you didn't get, the promotion you didn't get, the relationship that dissolved, what doors can open from this? My particular one is I was lucky, and I totally understand that people cannot all say this, but I had a cancer situation, and my whole attitude going in is, what can I learn from this? And I learned things that allowed me to share with other people and other patients. So, and that was gone, and I am cancer free. I mean, that was 13 years ago, and, been cancer free, and, it happened for me, and because it happened for me, it happened for other people. So you're right. Don't apologize for feeling good.
It's just a beautiful story. And I'm so glad that you shared that. All right. One final question for you, then I'm going to cut myself off.
Okay.
So have you noticed how leadership in the military is also changing? There used to be the big beef, the people in the control room that weren't on the field saying there isn't a bomb dropping on you. And the people in the field are going, I'm looking at it. All right. How's that changing?
Yeah, I think there is a lot changing. And I think the impetus was that asymmetrical warfare. We're fighting an enemy using different tactics. But I still think that the leader needs to be visible. A friend of mine is named Alan Weiss. I don't know if you know who Alan Weiss is, a incredible management consultant, just a remarkable human being. But he tells the story that back in the Civil War, the highest fatality and the highest mortality rate was the brigadier general, because the brigadier general got on the horse and led the charge, and everybody else was on the ground. Well, he was a very inviting target there, and a lot of them did not make it. They were picked off rather quickly. But if you take a look at the job, they couldn't have led without that visibility. So sometimes we have to increase our visibility, and we have to go first. I believe in, and one of the things that I learned in the Marine Corps, I had some outstanding leaders. I can't even describe how great they were, but they would lead first if it was dangerous, but they would eat last. They would always eat last. And I was out on long time, multiple day training exercises, and I'd have the officer in charge come back and look at me and find that I was out of food. And he would ask me for my packet of cream. It was cream powder. And he said, I'll trade you the cream powder for my spaghetti dinner. Wow. I go, what? And he literally would make that trade. And he lived on those cream packets. That's all he'd have in 24 hours. And you follow a person like that, the vulnerability that they show. And I think there's a lot more vulnerability that needs to be shown or should be shown on the part of leaders now, especially when we talk about critical thinking. I could be wrong. My assumption could be erroneous. And that's a very big thing. Is vulnerability. Everybody knows Brene Brown. She's made a career out of that. I haven't actually seen her, but I do know vulnerability and humility and ethics, I would say, are the top three leader qualities right now. And that's emerging.
Outstanding. Tim Durkin, thank you so much for your service and for a mesmerizing conversation.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I hope that if any of your listeners want those 100 questions, I'll be happy to send those on to them. And I don't harvest names, okay? I just reply with the attachment, and they don't go on my mailing list. They should. So go to timdurkin.com and sign up for his newsletter, and then tim@timdurkin.com for those 100 questions, because you can use those at work. You can also use those at home. And, because in my estimation, something is truly valuable if it works at work and it's at home, because the phone has blurred those lines. Mm-hmm. Work used to be a geographic location, but now work follows us home, and home follows us to work. Yes. So there's no life balance, there's life blend. That's another whole conversation, buddy.
Outstanding. Tim, thank you so much. You're amazing.
Thank you. Everybody have an amazing day.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Tim Durkin. Go to timdurkin.com. Check that out. Take advantage of the 100 questions, because that was awesome. And I strongly recommend that you go back with pen and paper. I couldn't take enough notes. I'm going to have to do it myself. So you just share it with your leadership team, share it with your friends, and reach out to Tim, see how he can help your company, and use this information to make your life and your business mesmerizing. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody. Hey, it's Tim. Are you ready to be inspired by the world's greatest motivational speakers? Witness history as the legends of business and personal growth share with you their best strategies for how to be profitable in our new economy. Go to legendsummit.com. That's legendsummit.com. I'll see you there.